Hi there. So, England's coming home. Well, it sure is. I'll get into that in a second. But before I do, I'm going to use some of this Sacred Love Energy Spray from Emily Jane. Emily Jane 39 at gmail.com. I've already done a video talking about her spray. So she does the spray that is specific to the Jezebel juice and being around Jezebel juiced individuals. But this one is Sacred Love Energy Spray. So it's a different blend and it's really lovely. I'm try and use this every day. Gorgeous. So, oh, lovely and really high vibrational. So, okay, so I have been asked by many people regarding the UK and what is happening. So we are talking about the UK domain in the village, in the novel, The Bifurcated Village. So we're talking about the UK domain and what is going on there, but it's actually interesting and important really for other domains to know what's going on in the UK domain in the village, because the agenda for the village, the entire village, is the same. So similar things will be playing out in different ways in all of these different domains. So the question obviously is to the protagonist in the novel, who is Gloria Love. So Gloria, are there any updates for the UK domain? And the date that's given here is July the 19th. And that's because there is actually something going on in the real world, regarding July the 19th. So I've taken that date and placed it into the novel because we are looking at an urban fantasy which mirrors what is occurring in our real world. But obviously we're looking at a deep fantasy, fictional exploration of reality, if you will. So it's all fiction, everything is fiction. So, Gloria, are there any updates for the UK domain in the village for July 19th? And the updates that they are specifically asking about is because there is this pathogenic situation in the village, again, something similar to real life, the overlords have put restrictions upon the individuals in the UK domain and in other domains in the village in different ways. So the overlords that are sort of controlling the UK domain have put restrictions on them. As I told you before, we have these pieces of cloth that they have to wear around their mouth, and there are other restrictions. So the question is to Gloria, the protagonist, asking her, will these restrictions that the individuals in the village are going through, will they be lifted? Will the village inhabitants only have restrictions lifted for a few months before they're brought back again? So that's the question. Gloria, are there any updates for the UK domain in the village for July 19th, lifting of the village restrictions? Will the village inhabitants only have restrictions lifted for a few months before they're brought back again? So that's the question, and we are looking at pure fiction here. Okay, my reply, and obviously as I'm the author of the novel, this is the way that we're looking at the potential storylines, the potential playouts. So my reply regarding the novel, full restrictions within the village will not cease. So I'll say that again, full restrictions in the village will not cease, regardless of what is sort of said by the overlords or those that print all the little papyrus papers that are passed out to the village inhabitants that have like news items written on them. Regardless of what is said within that, full restrictions won't cease in the village. There will be some form of restrictions still in place in the village, regardless of which storyline we go with, which play out occurs. So there are two potential storylines here that I could go with in that particular chapter. So one storyline I'm looking at is that something happens and these restrictions in the village will not end as the overlord that controls the UK domain, and his name is Boriso. Boriso, that particular overlord, something happens and Boriso totally backtracks on everything that he has said previously. I then added that I'm seeing a dark matrix energy for July 11th. This is specific to the UK domain. Now, I didn't realize when I was looking at that, at the different dates in July, as we're approaching July the 19th, I didn't realize that July the 11th is actually the day of this big game that they play in the village. They have this big ball that's made of these beautiful reeds, and the washerwomen sit around and make this big ball, and the villagers all get together and they kick the ball around the village. And so the UK domain will go into a game with another domain, and I really haven't got a clue who the other domain is, and that is the truth. I'm really interested in the game that they're playing simply because it's part of the whole sort of thing that I'm seeing, but I haven't got a clue who the UK domain are actually playing the game against. That's the truth. Oh, it sounds really naive, but I actually really don't know. I think the Denmark domain was there somewhere, possibly in the last game they played. I mean, it could be Germany. I really don't know. Anyway, that's beside the point, but I really don't know who the UK domain are playing. That's how much interest I give the game. But they are playing this big game on July 11th. And as I said, when I was looking at these different energetics for the dates leading up to July the 19th, to see if I could see something, because I was picking up that something happens. And then I got this, what I can call a dark matrix energy, but it looks like an implementation of sort of a black or dark gray or metallic matrix code. So, you know, like when you watch the Matrix movies, you've got all this green code going down the screen when you first watch the film, and it's on all of the, you know, promotional photographs. It's like that, but it's like a dark gray, black metallic energy. And I interpret that as infiltration from the overlords on that day. But I didn't realize that was the day they were playing the big game. So I feel in the novel that that particular game that the villagers are playing, or something around the game, something to do with the game, is being used, hijacked in some way. And it's used to implement the overlord's agenda. So that's why this game is important, because it's being used, it's being hijacked in some way. Now, I will look at that further in a minute, because I've actually picked up a little bit more about that, but that's one particular storyline, one play out. The second, and these are two different potentials, different storylines we could go with as we go forward and write this chapter in the novel together. So the second potential storyline, timeline, play out, potential, is that restrictions in the village are mostly lifted, and the new narrative of it's up to the villager to take personal responsibility for what they do is pushed. So this narrative of personal responsibility is pushed. Now, this potentially, you know, I'm looking at two different potentials here. Potentially, these could both occur and merge together. But we're looking at these as if they're separate playouts, separate storylines, but we could actually merge the two together in the novel. Let's just see how we go when we start writing it. So restrictions are mostly lifted in the village, and the new narrative of personal responsibility within each villager is pushed as wearing the piece of cloth across your face, and, you know, staying away from one another, spending time in your own hut. And when you do walk around the village, you know, you walk around the people, you don't sort of stop and talk to them for very long, or stand with them or hug them or anything like that. That all becomes voluntary in the village. So it kind of places a responsibility upon the individual, and those who choose to continue with these restrictions can then look at those who do not with even more critical disdain, if you will. Because before, it was a requirement in the village, a legal requirement, because the overlords said it was. Whereas now, the onus is on you, villager. You get to choose. You've made the wrong choice because you're not wearing your piece of cloth. that the giant cloth bird flies down and delivers all this cloth. And all the sewing women, they make all these little pieces of cloth and all the villagers have to wear it. But in this second play out, this will become voluntary. The first play out is that the restrictions don't ease. So that piece of cloth around the mouth that has to be worn across the face in the village remains a legal requirement, and the overlords will oversee that that is carried out. In the second play out, those restrictions are mostly lifted. In neither play out, restrictions are not all lifted, but they're mostly lifted. And then it's the individual's choice, but that puts the people against the people in the village. And I go on to say this presents a potential social battlefield in the village between those who choose to carry on with wearing the piece of cloth around their mouth and those who do not. Now, this won't be a few months of restriction-free life before it's brought back again. If we're going with option 2 storyline, it will be more like a few weeks, if that. So we're looking at, you know, if option 2 plays out, then we're looking at a few weeks, not a few months. And that's what I'm seeing in the village, in the novel. If that, few weeks, if that, before they're brought back. So the first option, which is not coming out of restrictions at all, that's the first potential storyline that we can write into the novel. That's the one I'm most likely going with at this point. However, these potentials for these two different storylines are currently running at around 60 to 40 in percentages. So there's a 60% probability that the first will play out, which is restrictions are not lifted in the village. So that's the storyline we're 60% going to be going with. However, the other storyline, which is that these restrictions are lifted, but then the onus is put on the people, and we've got this sort of social battleground, etc., for a few weeks or less, that's around 40% probability that I'm going to write that into the storyline. So I'm going with the first, but 60-40 is quite an even probability field. We aren't looking at the 80% chance of one and a 20% chance of another. We're looking at 60-40. So either of these could play out, but I'm going to go with the first as the most probable, the 60%, as the one I'm going to write into the storyline, which is where the restrictions are not lifted. Something happens, and Boriso, the overlord, his name is Boriso Johnstonian, he decides to backtrack on what he said, because this particular overlord, Boriso Johnstonian, he has actually said to the villagers that you know, this is definitely happening, that these restrictions are being lifted, and everyone's planning, are you going to wear your piece of cloth over your mouth when the big cloth bird delivers it to the village, or are you not going to wear it, because it will be your choice? And these conversations are dominating the village gossip at the moment. And when you look at the papyrus paper that's being delivered, it's like a written piece of news. It's just talking non-stop in the UK domain about, will you wear your piece of cloth or won't you wear your piece of cloth? Will you hug your grandma or won't you hug your grandma? Are you really selfish if you do this, or are you really unenlightened if you don't do that? So this is the big sort of gossip from now at the moment, banking on that second play out, which is that these restrictions will be lifted on July 19th. So I go on to say, whichever option they go with, the overlords, and obviously we're looking at my authorship with the storyline. So whichever storyline I choose to write based on you and your feedback for this novel, whichever option they go with, everything you hear them say is all part of the agenda and is pure theatre. So these overlords are playing a game in the village at the moment. Everything they say is a show. None of this is real. There isn't really you know, a conversation between, well, I want to do this, I want to take these pieces of cloth away, I want to release these restrictions and come out of the going back to the huts. This is what I want. And someone else says, well, I disagree with you. I think you're being very foolish and very risky in what you're doing. All of that's just a joke and an act. Having said that, there are some individuals who work for the overlords who don't realize that the overlords are overlords. They think that they are genuine leaders. And some of the things that they are saying is actually based on their own truth, based on the premise that they have. They're not playing a game. They are not projecting theatre. They are speaking from what they believe to be genuine based on the false premise that's being um, narrated around the village, if you will. So, but for the viewer looking at all of this, it's important to know that this is theatre. So whichever option they go with, everything you hear them say is all part of the agenda and is pure theatre in the novel from the overlords. So nothing here is based on what they're really trying to achieve. So the overlords in the village, in this fictional novel, what they are trying to achieve, nothing that's playing out is based on that. What they're trying to achieve is more restrictions, not less, not the easing of in the village. And I'm, you know, likening this to a similar situation in our real life, but of course that is all sort of you know, conjecture and philosophy. We are actually looking here at sort of playing that out into a fictional presentation and making a story out of it based on all these different viewpoints that are occurring in real life. So nothing here is based on what they're really trying to achieve, as they herd the gullible village inhabitants like sheep into the pen they choose. Both options lead, or are intended to lead, to more restrictions. So whichever option they choose, the agenda is the same. So it really doesn't matter, to be absolutely honest with you, whether the UK domain come out of restrictions for a few weeks and go back in, or whether they don't, because the ultimate agenda is the same. They're just two potential pathways into the agenda, which comes later in the novel. Both options lead to the those that have not eaten the poisoned apples or been drinking the poisoned apple juice. Both of these options lead to those individuals being blamed for new variations of this pathogen that's circulating the village coming up. So that's what the overlords are planning for, multiple variations coming in from all the different domains right across the village. Are making the pathogen worse in the way that it sort of spreads from village inhabitant to village inhabitant and how it affects them. That's the sort of main narrative. But the blame is being pushed onto those who have not eaten the poisoned apple and have not been drinking poisoned apple juice. Why? Because they want the people to be part of the pressure towards those people so that they give in and go and drink some of the poisoned apple juice, knowing it's poisoned, but still drink it, maybe believing that they have some power to transmute it. That's what these villagers potentially, all different kinds of villagers, are going to be thinking. And sadly, some of this pressure is going to work. I do see that. So regardless of which storyline, which timeline, which option, which eventuality plays out, some of the individuals that are not drinking apple juice are pressured into drinking it. Sadly, but that's a minority. When you're looking at all of the individuals, there are many who stand strong, and nothing that is done, no manipulation that's done, is going to make them eat one of those apples. Okay. So again, all fake and based on incorrect science. So, you know, we have scientists in the village that are advising the overlords or pretending to advise the overlords. Those scientists are either overlords themselves or some of them work for the overlords. So that's all part of the theatre, and it's fake science. It's actually inverted science. And I go on to say, all fake and based on incorrect science through an inverted program. It's inverted science. The real science comes from the village inhabitants that have studied science and that have an open heart and that are looking at true medicine and healing, and how that responds to the physical body of the inhabitant, and looking at all the spiritual healing as well. And you know, because we are looking at all these different types of inhabitants of the village. Some of them are partly elf, partly fairy, partly pixie. We have many fantasy fictional characters within the novel, and they're all different. And so when it comes to the real scientists, they know that every single one of these individuals reacts differently to the apples, or to different foods, or to different cocktails of you know, healing blends and botanicals and herbs and all of these things. But the incorrect science, the inverted program, says this is the truth, this is the human body, and this is the way the human body reacts. And there's no room for any difference, you know. And if they do say that people react differently, then that is to go with the agenda of, well, we don't know, we don't have the data yet. That's what the overlords are saying. We don't know what's going to happen when everyone eats these apples, because we don't have the data yet. So again, all fake, all based on incorrect science in the village with these characters through an inverted program. Remember, though, this is not a one-sided play out, for we have the white knights, if you will, the good guys, the patriotic individuals in the village, the soldiers, the warriors, the indigo uprising, and all of that. We have these open-hearted good soldiers, if you will, in place. Now, predominantly through medical whistleblowers in the village. These are the scientists, the good doctors that come forward and speak the truth, and genuine legal bodies standing up for true justice. So in the village, you have individuals that help people with law. They would be similar to our solicitors or lawyers that we have in the real world. But obviously, we are looking at fictional fantasy characters. So I guess we could write the, you know, those standing for true justice, we could write them in as, you know, sort of robed, priest-like individuals, but we're going to have ones that look different to the overlords, because the overlords wear that sort of garb. They wear like sort of black robes, and they look like dark priests, if you will. And those that stand for true justice, with an open heart, and that are looking at truth and honesty, they're the opposite. So they would be, if you will, the white knights, or perhaps the white hats, if you will. So buckle up and get your popcorn ready, was how I ended this statement. And a lot of people don't like that. They don't like it when you say get your popcorn ready, because that suggests that you're going to sit down in front of your book while you read the novel. So that suggests that the inhabitants are just going to sit on their hay bales and twiddle their thumbs and watch it all play out. And that's not what it means to me. It may mean that to other people, but to me, get your popcorn ready means there's things to look at. There is a show taking place. There is a theatre taking place. Sit down, watch, pay attention. But that doesn't mean you are a passive observer sitting on a hay bale in the village, or sitting on a chair in the audience of the theatre. You're participatory, of course you are. So I think get your popcorn ready has been misinterpreted, or let's say interpreted in multiple different ways. How I would interpret it is, there's a show coming, there's things to see, stuff's going on, get your popcorn ready, let's have a look at what's happening. It's like the show is about to start, is what it means. It does not mean sit down and do zilch. That isn't what it means, and that's not what it means for the inhabitants in this village. So these are the two playouts, and I'm going to go back to this game because I picked up a little bit more over the last couple of days. So I actually wrote this, I think, 2 days ago. And over the last couple of days since I wrote that, I've picked up a little bit more about this game. And I'm seeing two potentials here. Well, I would say we're looking at sort of 70-30 maybe potentials with this, within the storylines of how we're going to write this out. So we're looking at the first potential, and that is that something happens. And that something that happens is to do with the game that they are playing. which is why I started this talk with footballs coming home, because we do really have a game that's occurring on July the 11th. We actually have, England. So it's not the UK domain. It's not the UK. It's England. England is playing a football match for real in the real world. So we're writing that in the village. But obviously, the real football is nothing to do with this. That's just a coincidence. We're looking at the village, and we're looking at this dark matrix energy within the game. Of July 11th. So same day, purely coincidence. Everything we're discussing here is fiction. Okay, so what I'm feeling is that this game, how we're going to write this storyline, is that this game that the villagers are playing, so we've got the UK domain playing against another domain, and I'm not sure which domain that is, as I said. They're going to be playing this big game. So the overlords could do one of two things. So I'm looking at the 70% potential is that the game goes ahead as planned, and we're seeing lots of villagers ignoring these rules and restrictions, because obviously the game is on and they're excited. So they're hugging each other, kissing each other. They're not wearing the pieces of cloth over their mouths, and they're all huddled together in big groups, which they're not really allowed to do. Even though the majority of these individuals will have been drinking the apple juice, the hijacking on the 70% potential is that what they're doing, the huddling together, the hugging, the kissing, the jumping around, the completely ignoring of all the rules, has created either a huge jump in one of the variants, or it's created a new variant. It doesn't really matter which one they use. And so that's why the first potential is that these restrictions won't end, because Barizo Johnstonian will then backtrack and say, look, I'm really sorry, everyone in the village, all you inhabitants. I really wanted to ease all these restrictions, but you've all been playing this huge game with that big ball, kicking it around the village and hugging each other, and it's caused a massive variant. And so therefore, we're not going to be able to ease these restrictions. And potentially, we could be looking at, again, a 60-40. We're going back to the huts. You have to go back to the huts, or the restrictions will come in more, and you may have to stay in your hut for a certain amount of time. And however that plays out, that's the next potential on. I'm not really looking at that bit. So that's one way of hijacking the game in the village, and how I could write this in the storyline. The other one, which is a lesser probability, but it's around 30%. I don't know if this will be what I will write. I don't know if this is what will play out, but it's a potential in the timeline, and that is that the game doesn't go ahead at all. And the reason why that would occur is to hijack the emotions of all of the villagers, who are so excited about the game. They're very upbeat, very uplifted, and to prevent the game would dash all of those emotions. And that wouldn't just occur within the UK domain. This would affect more of the village and other domains, and the other domain that's playing the game. And 30%, I don't think it's going to play out. I think that that how this will go is that the game will go ahead, and it's afterwards that the hijacking occurs. However, this dark matrix energy on July the 11th looks powerful. It does look this metallic black sort of matrix, static in the energy field. So there could be more to it beyond this. I mean, there could be more to it beyond the game. It might involve more than the game. I mean, it looks to me as though this is somehow affecting the land. So this could be some kind of energy that affects the heartbeat of the village, which is the same sort of thing as our Schumann resonance, I guess. So we could write that in the potential, but again, that's sort of not something I'm seeing as a huge storyline. I'm thinking the most probable is that the way that everyone behaves when the game occurs, ignoring the rules, allows the overlords to come in, and Boris Johnstonian from the UK domain to backtrack on what he said and that the restrictions don't go ahead. But there is that second potential, which is that that does go, the restrictions are lifted to a point mostly, but I still feel that the game and what happened during that game is still hijacked, regardless of which potential storyline we decide to write in the novel, which potential plays out. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing, and that's the response to that question regarding an update for the UK domain in the novel on July 19th, and how it connects with this big game that they are playing, and how interestingly July the 11th is when I saw this dark matrix energy infiltration, and I didn't even know. It was my brother actually who told me. I actually said, I'm seeing this dark matrix energy July 11th, and he said that's the day of the football match in real life. So I decided to write that into the novel, and let's have the villagers playing a game, so it mirrors what's happening in real life. So I didn't know that when I looked at the dark matrix energy. So that's why I started this little talk as football's coming home, because it potentially is literally going home, going back to the huts. Let's see. Hasn't played out yet, and obviously this is a novel that's been unwritten. I've yet to write these chapters. Thank you for all of your feedback to this novel over on Telegram, over on MeWe, and a little bit on Minds and Gab as well, and Instagram, of course. So thank you for everyone who is, listening to me talk about this fictional book at this time that we are in right now. So yeah, football's coming home. I may or may not title this video that. I don't know if I will. It might be a bit misleading. So yeah, that's everything I have to say really about that. And obviously, if anything more comes to me, I will let you all know. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back again soon with more analysis videos of these posts that I'm writing on social media. Thanks for listening. Bye.